Brunch was supposed to be pleasant. Warm sunlight through tall windows, clinking silverware, polite laughter over eggs and coffee. That was how movies showed it anyway. In my family, Sunday brunch was just Sunday lunch with a fancier name, a splash of orange juice in cheap champagne, and a whole lot of judgment baked into every bite. That morning the table was set perfectly, as always. White linen cloth, polished silverware, floral napkins folded into sharp triangles. My mom believed appearances mattered, even if the people sitting at the table hated each other. She liked to pretend that if the place settings were symmetrical, the dysfunction would look less obvious. I sat across from my younger brother Tyler, who was scrolling on his phone between bites of quiche. The crust was so dry it could have doubled as packing material. Mom was sipping her mimosa like it was medicine, eyes sharp, waiting for her chance to deliver the day's criticism. Dave, her husband, was spreading butter across his toast as if he hadn't a care in the world. I should have known it was coming. It always came. "You're nobody," Mom said, in the same flat tone someone might use to comment on the weather. "Don't pretend you matter." There it was. Tyler chuckled, pleased to have a role in the performance. "Honestly," he said, not even looking up from his phone, "we forget you exist half the time." He laughed at his own joke, expecting me to join in. I didn't. I never did. Instead, I lifted my glass. A little clink of my fork against the rim, just enough to get their attention. It was something I'd seen in movies when people gave toasts. The sound made Tyler look up, his fork halfway to his mouth. Dave raised an eyebrow. Mom froze mid-sip. "This won't take long," I said calmly, my voice steady. "Just 3 sentences." I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. My face was armor. By the second sentence, Mom's skin had gone pale, her perfectly applied lipstick suddenly too bright against her face. Dave's hand stilled. Tyler's grin wavered. That was the moment brunch stopped being brunch. But before I explain what I said, before I explain why Mom's fingers shook against her champagne glass, you need to understand how I got there. Why that clink of glass was years in the making. Growing up invisible. Some families are sitcoms. They have quirky traditions, embarrassing birthday parties that become funny stories later, inside jokes that never die.
Mine was nothing like that.
My childhood was less Full House and more Survivor, minus the prize money. From the outside, we looked normal. Holiday cards with 4 smiles. Scrapbooks of family vacations where everyone pretended to be happy. The fridge plastered with Tyler's terrible crayon drawings, framed as though he were destined to become Picasso. Inside, it was different. Tyler was the star. He could break things and be called spirited. I spilled a glass of juice once and was called careless, dramatic, sent to my room. At 9 years old, I came home waving a small certificate from an art contest I'd won. Nothing huge, just a local thing, but I was proud. Mom looked at it and said, "You should focus on science. Art won't get you anywhere." That same week Tyler brought home a participation ribbon for Best Listener. She framed it. It added up. 1,000 small cuts. You start to wonder if maybe you really are less interesting, less likable, less worthy. The only person who made me feel otherwise was Dad. He wasn't flashy. He didn't give speeches or try to win awards. He just showed up. He made grilled cheese that could fix a bad day. He helped with homework without sighing. He actually listened when I talked about books or drawings. But to Mom, his presence was a personal insult. She treated him like she treated me, with disdain, like we were both clutter in her otherwise perfect house. The message. The day everything changed, I was 12. I was sitting in the living room with a bowl of stale popcorn, half watching a sitcom rerun. Tyler was upstairs. Mom was on her phone. She turned the TV off suddenly, sat across from me, and said she needed to show me something serious. She scrolled through her messages, handed me the screen. It was one line. "If you take her, I'll kill you both." My dad's name was above it. I remember staring at the screen, my brain refusing to compute. My dad, the man who cried watching Finding Nemo, who told me he loved me every single time we talked, had apparently written a death threat. Mom rubbed my back like she was the hero of the story. "See," she said. "This is who he really is." I've always known something was wrong with him. I'll protect you. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, stunned, like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. What followed was a blur: court filings, custody battles, rules I didn't understand. No phone calls, no visits. My dad was erased overnight, like he'd been edited out of the script. And I was told to be grateful. Mom called those the rebuilding years. Which was laughable. She didn't rebuild anything. She just tightened her control. I became her emotional punching bag, her live-in help. Tyler became louder, lazier, crueler. I became invisible. For years, I shoved Dad into a mental box labeled dangerous. But the label never fit. The older I got, the more it itched.
Doubt.
In my 20s, the doubts grew teeth. My memories of Dad didn't line up with the so-called proof. He was the kind of man who made pancakes shaped like animals. He said safety first unironically. He wasn't the type to write threats. I tried to silence the questions, but they only got louder. Until one night I pulled out my phone and typed a message to a number I wasn't sure even worked anymore. Hi, I don't know if this is still your number, but I wanted to say hello. Haley. 15 minutes later, the reply came. Haley, I've been waiting 10 years for this. Meeting Dad. We met in a park 3 days later. Neutral ground. I half expected him to look different, harder, like maybe my childhood memories had been naive. He looked the same. A little grayer, a little smaller, but his eyes hadn't changed. We sat on a bench, coffee cups warming our hands. It wasn't until the second cup that I asked the question. The message, I said quietly. Did you write it? He shook his head. No hesitation. I didn't send it. I never would. He didn't cry. Didn't beg. Just said he was sorry I believed it, but he understood why I had. And here's the strange part. I believed him. Not because he had evidence, but because for the first time in years my gut stopped screaming. That was the moment I knew I had to find the truth. Becoming an investigator. I wasn't a hacker. I wasn't some conspiracy theorist. I was just a daughter with questions. But questions can turn into obsessions. I studied. I trained. I got licensed as a private investigator, not the trench coat kind, but the legal, paperwork-heavy digital forensics kind. Metadata. Records. Bank tracing. Public information that most people didn't know how to find. I built a career from it. Small cases at first, background checks, missing pets, cheating spouses. Every file I closed gave me more tools, more confidence. But in the back of my mind, it was all preparation for one case, my own family. Moving back. At 26, I told Mom I'd lost my job. Said I couldn't afford rent anymore. That I needed a little help. She rolled her eyes but agreed. You can stay in the laundry room, she said, as if she were offering a gift. The next Sunday brunch was supposed to be like every other. Champagne flutes, expensive omelets, and her mother's endless commentary about how much better Tyler's life was compared to Haley's. But this time, Haley wasn't just a quiet listener. She came armed with proof. She placed a neat, leather-bound folder in the middle of the dining table. The clink it made against the glass surface silenced even her mother. What's this? Tyler asked, half a smirk on his lips. Homework. Dave chuckled, reaching for a piece of toast. Haley sat straighter. It's the truth. And you're all going to hear it. Her mother narrowed her eyes, fork frozen midair. Don't start your dramatics, Haley. Not here. But Haley's voice was calm, steadier than it had ever been. You've all told me my father abandoned us. That he was worthless. That he never wanted me. For years, I believed you. She opened the folder and spread several printed emails across the table. But here's the reality. Tyler leaned over, frowning. What the hell is this? Bank transfers, Haley said sharply. Dad's money. Monthly. He sent enough to cover the mortgage, your tuition, and even your new car, Tyler. Every cent accounted for. Her mother's face drained of color. That doesn't prove anything. You don't know what you're talking about. Haley slapped down another page, this time, a copy of a legal letter. This is the court document where you waived his visitation rights, Mom. You signed it. You told him he'd never see me again unless he kept paying. The room went cold. Even Dave stopped chewing. That's a lie, her mother hissed. Haley's eyes burned, but she refused to cry.
No.
It's your lie. And you've been feeding it to me for 20 years. For the first time in her life, Haley saw her brother pale, his arrogance cracked. Dave shifted uncomfortably, his usual bravado gone. The brunch was no longer a celebration. It was a courtroom, and her mother had just been caught red-handed. Without waiting for their response, Haley gathered the folder, tucked it under her arm, and stood. I won't sit here and be treated like a nobody anymore, she said firmly. Because I'm not. I know who I am, and I know who he is. You can't erase that truth. Then she walked out, and nobody followed. Reunion. The park was quiet that afternoon. Children played on swings in the distance, and the smell of fresh-cut grass carried on the wind. Haley sat on a bench, clutching the folder like a lifeline. She almost didn't recognize him when he arrived. He looked older, grayer, thinner, but his eyes were the same. Her father. He stopped a few feet away, hesitant, as if afraid she might vanish. Haley. Her throat closed. Dad. The word felt foreign and familiar all at once. He sat beside her slowly, leaving a careful space between them. I wasn't sure you'd ever want to see me. Tears blurred her vision, but she shook her head. I thought you didn't want me. His hand trembled as it reached for hers. I wanted you more than anything, but she made sure I couldn't. The dam broke. Haley leaned into him, sobbing quietly as he wrapped his arms around her for the first time in decades. The years of absence, of loneliness, of manipulation, they all poured out in that single embrace. For once, she felt like a daughter again, building the case. It wasn't enough to know the truth. Haley wanted justice. Her father, cautious but encouraged, agreed to pursue legal action. Together, they compiled the documents Haley had unearthed, the bank transfers, the signed court papers, the messages Dave and her mother had exchanged. A lawyer friend of her father's reviewed everything. This is more than enough, he said grimly. Financial abuse.
Fraud.
Parental alienation. She won't be able to talk her way out of this. Haley had spent her life listening to her mother's voice dominate every room. Now she longed to see her silenced. Courtroom battles. The courtroom was colder than she expected, its marble walls echoing with tension. Her mother arrived dressed in an expensive suit, Dave trailing behind like a guard dog, and Tyler looking as lost as Haley had ever seen him. Her mother's lawyer tried to spin the story. The payments were gifts, the documents misunderstood, the signatures forged. But Haley's evidence was airtight. Page after page, file after file, her mother's lies collapsed. Haley sat beside her father as the judge questioned her mother. For once, the woman who had controlled every narrative had nowhere to run. Dave shifted uncomfortably under scrutiny, his name appearing in multiple messages discussing how to keep Haley quiet and squeeze him for more. Tyler, red-faced, muttered, You told me he left us.
His voice cracked.
You lied. For the first time, Haley didn't feel like the invisible sibling. She was the one with power. When the judge finally ruled, it was clear. Her father was cleared of all accusations, her mother faced severe financial penalties, and Dave was implicated in fraudulent activity. The empire they had built on lies crumbled in one afternoon. Aftermath. The house that had once been filled with expensive furniture and bitter laughter was auctioned off to pay debts. Dave disappeared into obscurity. Tyler cut contact with their mother and moved out, humbled in ways Haley never thought possible. Her mother, once the queen of manipulation, now lived in a small apartment, stripped of her grandeur. Haley didn't visit.
She didn't need to.
Instead, she spent her Sundays in a quiet home with her father, sharing coffee and stories they should have had years ago. He never tried to replace the past with apologies. He simply showed up, week after week, and that was enough. Reflection. One evening, sitting alone in her apartment, Haley opened the folder one last time. The papers that had once been weapons now felt like relics of a war she had survived. For years, She had been told she was nobody. A background character. A mistake. But she wasn't. She was the one who found the truth. The one who stood up when no one else would. The one who carried the receipts that destroyed a kingdom of lies. And as she closed the folder for the last time, she whispered to herself with a quiet, unshakable certainty, I am somebody.
The end.